Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Hi everyone and welcome to On the House, the Household Management Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Gabriella Yastra, coming to you from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's begin.
Hello and welcome back to the show. When it comes to the environmental impact of textile waste, most people tend to think about apparel or clothing, which is a crucial conversation for sure. But often swept under the rug are other household textiles like, rugs and carpets and bedding, curtains, cleaning towels, and so on. And according to engineering services company Aquafil Group, the US carpet industry produces nearly 12 billion square feet of carpet annually, which with only 5% of it recycled. Reason for this being, most carpets are made of nylon, which is incredibly detrimental to the environment, and carpets are also simply not as easy to recycle as your cardboard or milk cartons. So today, we'll be learning more about the environmental impact of household textile waste, such as carpets and bed sheets, and how to reduce it. And guiding us through this is textile practitioner Emma Peters, who has a background as a commercial textile designer and is currently a lecturer at the University of New South Wales as well. So welcome to the show, Emma. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much, Marie. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this because, like I said in my introduction, I feel like household textile waste is often talked about in the context of clothing. But before we begin, do tell us about your background and your work in textiles and what compelled you to pursue this work.
Sure, I'd love to introduce myself. So I am a textile practitioner, which is a term I use to capture all the things I do. So I make textiles, I design them, I research textiles, and I teach because I'm at a university. So everything kind of centers around textile making, traditional skills, innovative skills, and how we can be more sustainable in that field. So I came to textiles as a kid, I was really interested in making things, and I loved how empowering it was to take a needle and thread and make something. And then at university, I took a course in textiles, and here I am a long time later, still in the industry and educating the next generation.
Oh, that sounds like such a colorful life. So in your entire span of working with textiles, what is a common misconception you've heard with regards to household textile waste?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it actually in the introduction that household textile waste goes under the radar when we're thinking about sustainability, because fashion and fast fashion gets a huge amount of attention, as it deserves, because it's a massive problem. But a proportion of textile waste is our household textiles, and it's more difficult to know what to do with those textiles if you want to be sustainable. So the misconception is that there are actually really great things we can do with, our bedding and our curtains and old kind of household goods. And that's my job, to investigate creative pathways. What can we do with all that stuff?
Yeah, that's such a great preface for today, and I am stoked to learn more from you. But before we go further into detail, I would love to get to know you better. So this is Have You Met Emma? And this is going to be done rapid fire style. So Emma, please answer these within a few words as much as possible. Firstly, book.
So I was thinking about this. My favorite book at the moment is Juice by Tim Winton, that came out last year. Only because it talks about climate change into the future and the impact we have on our future generations.
Yeah, solid choice. Movie?
I chose a movie that no one has probably heard of. It's called Love and Other Catastrophes. It was a 1990s movie by an Australian director set at a university in Melbourne. And I watched it as a high school student and fell in love with the university life. And I think that has kind of come through in my career quite a bit. I'm still here.
And podcasts?
Oh, so many podcasts. One I really love is called Material Matters with Grant Gibson. It's a UK podcast who they interview designers and artists based on materials that they use, so really specific to materiality. And I must say there's a new one called The Curious History of Your Home, which might be interesting for your listeners to watch. And it talks into, the history of laundry, the history of bins, the history of sheds. It's very niche.
Yeah. And role model?
I've been really fortunate to have an amazing mentor. Her name was Liz Williamson, and she is an Australian weaver, and she was a great advocate for making and sustainability. Unfortunately, she passed away last year, but she leaves a really strong legacy in the textile community.
And course?
So it was probably a course back in my undergrad days when I was studying design, and we learned how to felt. So taking wool and making fabric. It was this one little class, but I investigated felt in my practice for a long time after that, and I still have a soft spot for that.
Yeah. And what is the most important lesson that you've learned from all of these that you've shared with us?
I think it's about connection and relationships. So connecting to your work, connecting to people, how our community, our earth, the materials that we use, all we rely on each other, and we have to kind of come to a balance. So maybe that's the thread that goes through all these.
Yeah, I love that sentiment. There's been a time in my life where I've not really felt very engaged in what I did. And I have to say that trying to find that engagement with what you do, it really helps with finding fulfillment in your life. So those are some really intriguing answers right there. And I feel like we got to know you a little bit better. So thanks for sharing all that with us. But now let's dive right into the environmental impact of household textile waste and how to reduce it from a textile practitioner herself. And for starters, how would you define household management?
So household management for me is about taking care of all the parts of a system. So what is happening in the home in terms of the people, the animals, the flora, the fauna, and how that all comes together to create a healthy and balanced environment. So that's really hard to keep all of that in flux, including the economics of how it all works. But having a collaborative, engaging, creative, curious mind around household management assists in making it a joyful experience rather than a challenging one.
Oh yeah, 100%. I have to say, like when I was younger, I always viewed household management as like this fun, joyous thing, which it can definitely be, but I always viewed it from a very like pristine, I had a very pristine perception of it. Like it's just decorating the house or keeping it clean and keeping the chores done, which it is part of it. But there's so much more that goes into household management, which is, I think, what most people come to find out later in their adult years, because most people don't really think about that when they're fresh out of uni. We're just trying to survive, right? But I digress. Secondarily, what is your definition of household textile waste?
So, waste is anything that has come to the end of its useful life. Textile waste is stuff that you have in your closets and you're not using anymore, or it's just kind of deteriorated to a point where you can't use it. So something that's not functioning in the way that you need it to, or it's not living up to your style or aesthetic identity, then often textiles that you don't find beautiful become waste.
Yeah. And apart from apparel and clothing, which is what most people think about in terms of textile waste, what are some examples of textile waste from around the household?
Well, anything can become waste if it's come to its end life. So you can imagine that you have a couch and it's upholstered, and that upholstered has been scratched by your cat, for instance. So, what do you do with that? Do you throw the couch out or do you keep it and repair it, for instance? Or um, towels that are stained from dyeing your hair. There's so many different textiles that in the home, and all of them have a use life. And we have to kind of think about, well, is it really over for this textile? Can we reuse it? Can we repair it? Can we reinvent it before we throw it away?
Yeah. And how would you describe the relationship between household management and waste management?
This is really interesting. Our houses are finite in their capacity to house things, and we're in many cities living in smaller environments. So to be in charge of what comes into the house, but also what goes out of the house, allows us to feel a sense of calm and serenity. So we're not, full of things. So bringing things into the house is easy, but deciding what goes out is harder, and how it goes out. So, what are the responsible ways to ensure that your textile waste goes to different uses?
Oh, 100%. I've been trying to get rid of this fridge and mattress that's been lying around my apartment for the last few months, and
Yeah.
it has been a trying time.
Yeah,
Like,
those big items are difficult. It's really,
yeah.
really challenging.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, once you collect a good amount of textile waste, it, like, I don't know. I personally do feel a responsibility to discard it responsibly and find a place that will take it in. It just sometimes, like, I don't feel like paying to get my trash taken away, you know. But we'll talk about that a bit more later on, because I feel like this is a very common experience where people love to bring things in, but then when it comes to throwing things out, it feels just counterintuitive to have to pay this large sum and travel a long way just to discard it responsibly. But before we go into that, from your expertise, what is the importance of understanding how to manage waste, especially when it comes to household textiles?
Yes, so managing textile waste, and you actually just mentioned a word that's really important. It is our responsibility. Once we purchase something, our responsibility is to use it and to discard it responsibly, or to send it into a new life. And I think we need a bit more help from policies and incentives and local council initiatives to make it a bit easier for us to know what to do with all our things. And it depends on your local area and how they deal with waste as to how much assistance you get with that. So that can be challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us more about the environmental impact of household textile waste specifically.
So we're seeing much of the textile waste going to landfill. So that is where it ends up if it's not in use. And that has real consequences on climate change. Landfills are also finite and they're environmentally quite difficult to control. They have a lot of gases that emit from landfill, and the use of that land. It takes a long time to regenerate that landfill land for productive use after. So we really need to think about, imagine the textile, where is it going? Is it possibly heading to landfill? It can also end up in the ocean. It can also be shipped overseas to third world countries, and then they're left with the problem. So we're seeing a lot of kind of pushback from our textile waste. So it's become an issue that is a bit more in our like, it's really evident that we have to do something about this waste. We can't send it away anymore. So it does
Yeah.
have a huge impact.
Yeah, and I definitely agree that there needs to be more initiative on the policy level. But in the meantime, the best that we can do is build our awareness as consumers and individuals. So, what are some of the most common mistakes that people make when it comes to managing the textile waste? What lessons can we learn from these mistakes?
So, in a recent survey I completed last year for my PhD, it really came to light that people do think that putting textiles in the bin is a good way to dispose of them. And I think what the problem is that if the textile is so degraded that no one will wear it or use it, that they're deciding that it won't go to charity because it has no use in that space. So the next best thing is the garbage collection. However, that is a direct route to landfill. And we're seeing opportunities now where there are small organizations who are collecting that really degraded textile, like the rags, and remanufacturing them. So breaking the fibers down and building them back up into new textiles for a new life. However, that process at the moment, it's quite an arduous one. So the sorting of the textiles and the breaking down of the fibers, it's not the perfect solution yet. It needs to be a little bit more scaled up. So really we need to come back to what can we do with our textiles to make them last longer, and that is about caring for our textiles, repairing them and finding different ways to use them in the house.
Yeah, that's a really good way of coming at it. And when it comes to recycling textiles as well, like what you said, donating does seem to be a very popular route. And most of the time, people think like, or if it's not good enough to be donated, I'll just put it in the trash. Like, what role do you think, the decision fatigue plays in people doing this, because there's so many different categories for recycling, and we have to have three different bins, and some apartments don't even get those three different bins. Some apartments get like just the simple trash chute and the recycling, and you can't really put textiles in the general recycling. So yeah, what role do you think that decision fatigue plays in this?
I think it really does impact how we decide how we behave around sorting our textiles and thinking about what we can do with them, because it's going to take up our time and headspace, and we're all time poor. So if we're working and studying and caring, there isn't a lot of time to think, what am I going to do with this one item and how am I going to deal with this? And it either stays in a pile or it gets put in the rubbish. And the systems that we have are sometimes not the they're not going to allow the textile to go to the right place. So it does come back to us as driving to a charity bin or researching recyclers, which some of us don't have time to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that one of the best ways to avoid getting to that point is to extend the life of our clothing and textiles. So, what are some of the effective ways to do that?
So, firstly, it's about care. So, if we care for our textiles, then they're going to last longer. And washing them correctly, so looking at that washing tag, and if it's hand washing, do that. That's going to preserve your textile. Then, if the textile is disintegrating, so it might get a tear or a rip or a button falls off, applying sewing skills. However, we don't all have the time or the skills to repair major issues with textiles. In the case of bed linen, if a bed sheet rips, that's a pretty major repair to conduct. So, what we really need is to revalue our repair skills, give people those ways of, how best to repair, and creative ways to do something new, maybe cutting the sheet down, making them into pillowcases or clothing is what we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, I really like that piece of advice. I actually have a stuffed toy that just hangs around the house. Doesn't it's I don't hug it or anything like that, but it is losing its fluff, and I have been meaning to restuff it. But I do have some clothing that I'm just not going to wear anymore. So instead of buying the extra fluff, which I was going to do, I was going to purchase a big bulk of fluff to restuff my polar bear, but you've given me the idea now to just use the clothing, and that's going to be a fun project, I think. But what would you recommend people, how would you recommend people learning sewing, especially as an adult? It can feel a bit counterintuitive to start learning a new skill like this.
Yes, because sewing was something that most females were taught in historic times. Even in the 70s, you'd take classes on how to embroider your name and make a sampler. But it's become something that isn't taught as much. And we don't have those skills anymore unless you've had a grandparent or a parent that has sat down and taught you. And I'm seeing at this time that people are picking up a lot of skills from YouTube. So, Googling instructional videos, and also making a resurgence are community mending groups and repair cafes. So, coming together socially, sitting down and learning new skills together, which is a really nice way to build community and do something that is sustainable.
Oh, that sounds so fun. And for the people who like digital natives who don't so much enjoy in person things, YouTube is a great resource. I think that's where I learned how to do my basic sewing and stitching. And that's all you really need to do simple fixes as well. Um, and apart from repairing and making sure that you're washing your clothes correctly, what do you think are some other simple ways to start reducing textile waste at home?
It goes back even earlier to when you're deciding what to bring into the house. So, if you're bringing in a new cushion, for instance, maybe taking a beat and thinking, do I need this cushion? Could I make this cushion? Is there something else? So, not bringing it in the first place is very sustainable. Say no. then, then thinking creatively, like, um, could could you do a swap? So if you have a cushion and you want to swap with someone, could you kind of organize a swap system? Or thinking about if you're buying secondhand versus new. If you're buying new, then looking at the brand and understanding how sustainable that brand is, what kind of fibers are in the product, thinking about how long you might have that product for. So if you're buying something that you think you'll only really love for 3 months, maybe reconsider and think, well, what might last and suit me for more than that length of time. So a classic design, colors that you've loved for a long time, patterns that won't date. So making those really smart choices before you get the product is going to actually really help with your waste. And then thinking about what you will love. So handmade and gifts and something that a person has put a lot of love into, you're going to hold on to that for a lot longer. And you won't throw out an heirloom quilt, for instance. You will keep that forever.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of looking at the type of fibers that are in the textile that you're purchasing, what kind of fibers should we be looking out for? I've heard a lot about how, like, you should try and stay away from synthetic fibers as much as possible. Now it's really difficult with how expensive everything's getting. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, I think it depends on the product. So some products you need them to really last a long time, and they're, cleaning products and washers, they need to last a long time. So a synthetic will bring that with it. It's a very strong fiber. If it's bed linen, you want a natural fiber because it will breathe, it'll be more comfortable. So in some products, really to avoid synthetics due to their characteristics is a smart idea. If you're buying synthetic bed linen, for instance, you're going to get hot, you're going to get annoyed, and you're going to throw it out really soon. So making a wise purchase with breathable natural fibers at the beginning will help you keep it for longer. So cottons, linens, they're really good ones.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I have seen a lot about like sustainable textiles in, all that marketing, and it's really starting to make the rounds. What does it mean by sustainable textiles? What do they mean when they say sustainable textiles?
Yeah, it's a big umbrella word that captures a lot of things. And sometimes you have to dig into the websites to understand what they're meaning by sustainable. So, a sustainable textile might be, depending on the brand's definition, it could be natural fibers, but it could be that it's organic. It could be, there's less chemicals in the making of the textile. Also, ethical making. So the people making the product are cared for, and they have they're paid well, and they're not in harm when they're making the product. So there are things you need to kind of dig into, and sometimes it's not very clear as to what the brand is doing. So the ones that are doing it well are often really talking about it a lot, especially in their social media and websites.
Yeah, I think that is so fascinating to me because green marketing has just been really getting so popular. And it for people who are less digitally literate, which I don't like, I think it's good to have, but I don't think it's quite fair to put all of the responsibility on the consumer, if that makes sense. So what are some of the most important factors to look out for when purchasing textiles that claim to be sustainable? What pages should we be visiting?
Yeah, there's some really great pages that rank brands from how well they're doing sustainability and ethical design. The World Baptist organization is one where you can type in a brand and you can see its star rating, and that's quite a good one to refer to. There are apps that you can connect into. So if you're out, shopping for something and you're trying to decide what shop to go into, they can help you out with where to go and how to find sustainable products really easily. So there's a lot of resources, but it does come back to the consumer to educate themselves. And because of greenwashing, it's a really murky terrain for us to kind of wade through. And when you're trying to make a quick decision, sometimes you don't have the time to kind of investigate deeply what you're purchasing. So it is really difficult to wade through that muddy water of, is this a good choice?
Yeah, for sure. And bringing back to the act of disposing the textile waste, I don't believe we've covered what that process looks like. So, what are the steps that people should go through when it comes to disposing their textile waste?
Sure. So I think the first question you need to ask yourself is, has this textile really come to the end of its life? So I think we have expectations of textiles and for a lot of our household goods, we want them to be in pristine condition. We want them to look box fresh for years to come. We don't want them stained or aged. However, that isn't a reality of materials. Materials where they change color, they fade, they peel, with textiles, the fibers come off. So what is an interesting one is to really question what our level of why do we want brand new things, and then maybe stretch our comfort zone to include things that feel worn and loved and cherished, and understand that as a good thing rather than a not so good thing. So that's one question that I would ask before throwing it out. Then I'd think, could I gift this to someone? Could I donate it? Could it be worn or used by someone else? Would I be happy to give this to a friend or a sibling? And if it passes that test, you'll probably be able to find someone to give it to, or do a big kind of textile swap with your friends. Often university campuses organize these kinds of swap days. And really, if you can't find a place to home it, then what else could it be? Could you use this as a drop cloth when you're painting a room? Could you donate it to an animal shelter in the instance of bath towels that you don't use anymore? So, thinking about it, there's actually quite a few questions you need to ask, and it's it's really when it's not ingrained in us, it doesn't feel like a natural progression. It feels quite like a lot, but the more we do it, the more we get used to kind of thinking in alternative ways to what can I do with this textile before I throw it out.
Yeah, and it's not going to be an overnight process either. It sounds like it does require a little bit of self-reflection, so that you really know what textiles you want to keep, what you view as valuable, and to just get to know what the process is like and familiarize yourself with it. It's like getting a new job, but not quite. You're not getting paid for it.
Yeah, absolutely. We are changing our behavior, and behavior change takes a long time. It's a new habit that we're forming. So we're not going to be perfect. And, even me who is in this field, I make mistakes all the time, but also I learn from those mistakes, and it's okay. We're all imperfect
Yeah.
people.
That's actually really heartening to hear. So, what was the most recent textile waste mistake that you made?
Good question. Let me. So I think for me, my background is in design, so I love beautiful things. And my kids wanted a bedroom refresh over the summer. And I was like, great, we'll go and get some new bed linen. And as I was putting it on their beds, I'm like, I researched this, and wow, I didn't even really stop to consider, instead of buying something new, could I have done something differently? There was 1,000 different options. I could have made them something really easily, but it's really ingrained in us from a consumption point of view that a refresh means new stuff, a new look, and that doesn't have to be the case. And I think that's quite a contemporary kind of habit that we have. And going back to, what we cherish and what we love and what we've had for a long time, and really valuing those pieces as much as we do the new things. So yeah, I find myself in IKEA buying new stuff. Full disclosure.
Well, that's wonderful. And thank you for sharing that with us. It's been really fascinating and so heartening to hear that professionals like you make mistakes like that too. So for everyone who's listening, don't feel pressure to dispose of your waste completely perfectly, because or to practice sustainability or waste management to the T, because not everyone can do that, and that's completely fine. It's really more on like, societal level. There should be some change there, and that will help us as individuals. But I think we've learned quite a good bit about household textile waste. Now let's take a break with some questions from the internet, where we will still kind of be learning about household textile waste. But this is where I will be posing some burning questions from netizens to you for your expert insights and advice. So the first question I have here is sewing contributing to textile waste? I love sewing and am always sewing during my free time. Since starting this hobby, I stopped buying ready to wear clothes from stores, but I make the same number of pieces that I buy in a year. So it still feels so wasteful because as it accumulates, I have to declutter eventually. So is sewing contributing to textile waste?
Oh, that's a good one. So there's a few missing pieces of information that I would need to fully answer this question. One of them is the questioner using secondhand fabric or are they buying new fabric? So new fabric would contribute to sustainability issues. I'd also think that because they're making garments that are customized to their size, they definitely are buying less, because how often do you buy a piece and it's not fitting well and you don't wear it, so you dispose of it? So I think in that way, sewing your own clothes, having those skills is amazing. And if you have skills to make your clothes, you usually have the skills to repair your clothes. So I would think that those clothes that the person has made most likely last longer because it fits, they can repair them, and they've made them so they have an inbuilt kind of emotional connection to the maker. Something that you have made, you've put time into, and you value it more. So those three things mean that what home sewing is a really sustainable practice, depending on where you get your fabric from and depending on what you do with them when you're decluttering. So are you giving them to your friends? Are you clothes swapping or donating? Or are you throwing them in the bin? So they're all the variables that would make
Yeah.
it less or more sustainable.
Yeah, those are some good considerations to take into account. I believe the original poster said that they don't have much access to secondhand fabric because they're from an area where the sewing community is really small. So secondhand fabrics are really hard to come by. So what would the consideration be in that case?
Well, I'd actually, as they say, shop your own wardrobe. So if there's something you're not wearing, can you take that apart, disassemble it, and turn it into something that you would wear? And that's when actually bed sheets come into play, because if you've got an old bed sheet that you're not using anymore, could you dye it a different color? Could you cut it up and make it into a new garment? Really exciting sustainability designers are using bed linen because it's such a big piece of fabric and you can get a lot out of it. So those are the kinds of things they could do.
So true. You could totally like use it for Halloween costume making or something like that. Just cut a hole through it and put it over your head.
Yeah, I see
Easy
that a lot.
easy Halloween costume. Okay, the
Yeah.
next question here is, how do I clean stained bed sheets? My bed sheets get stained yellow after a while. I put them through a few washes, but it doesn't seem to get out. So how should I get rid of it? How should I get rid of the stain if it's possible?
Yeah, stains are really hard, especially bedding stains, because we spend so much time on those sheets and pillowcases and we get hot and sweaty, all those kinds of things. And a lot of cleaners can be quite unsustainable. So bleach can be problematic for the environment. Focusing on natural cleaning agents like white vinegar, lemon juice, baking soda, they're all, old school but environmentally friendly treatments to clean sheets. But also you could think about over dyeing the sheet. So if it's a white sheet that's turned yellow, dye it another color and you've got a brand new sheet. So it doesn't necessarily mean the life of the sheet is over. You can do things with it to make sure that it looks lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really that's a good piece of advice. But I do wonder, like, how important is it to make sure that the color you're dyeing your bed sheets isn't too light? Because what if you dye it like light blue and then the yellow stain comes through and it's like a green stain now?
Yeah, you might need to do a little test or choose a darker color. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Choose a darker color. Not suitable for people with light colored cats because the fur would get
Correct.
everywhere, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have this issue myself actually because a while back my cat regurgitated on my bed sheets and I tried to get the stain out, but it just it was quite stubborn. Like I used Novak, which is this I'm not sure if like other parts of the world have it, but it's this like carpet cleaner or like fabric cleaner. It's kind of like spray on and then you kind of put a paper towel over it and sometimes like it goes away and it lastly went away, went into wash, comes out, there's still a stain there. It's pretty like pale now, but it's still there. Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, so probably because of the substance, which may include acid, it's kind of eaten away at the color and it's really changed. It's taken the color out, actually. So, what color was the bed sheet
White.
originally? White, yes. And has it gone yellow?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's given, I mean, actually, a lot of fibers aren't white, they get bleached white. So, it might have returned to its original shade. Or it's added a color in. And some stains can be so stubborn. I mean, I actually think sometimes we're too critical about stains. And who is seeing our sheets other than us and our partner and families? So, do they need to be pristine? Is probably my question. I think we've got this moral and ethical dilemma where clean sheets mean we're good, clean, hygienic people, but that sheet is clean. It just has a different color on it. So I'm like, maybe loosen up our standards on what cleanliness looks like, or get a class in embroidery and embroider a flower over the top of it and mask it up,
Or
or do some patching. So there's lots of creative things you can do, but I actually think the easiest thing to do is just, is it
live with
clean?
it.
Yes. Live with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. All right. That's all the questions that we have from the internet today. Now let's look at what we can do in our daily lives to maintain household textiles and manage household textile waste. The first question I have is, what habits would you recommend practicing when it comes to managing textile waste?
The habit I think that's going to be the biggest difference is to think before you buy. Do you really need it? And then think about responsible ways to discard. So, gathering stuff up in bulk, having a place in the house where you put things in. So you're not donating every second day. You're kind of doing it in batches. So think before you buy and batch bulk your waste to donate.
Yeah. And what are some of the challenges or struggles that most people may face in trying to think before they buy or practice the responsible ways of discarding?
I think we're time poor and we have a lot of stuff to consider. So we've got a lot of waste going on and we're, constantly cleaning and picking up and sorting. So I think that's probably the greatest challenge, to find time in the week to kind of dedicate to, well, what am I doing with this pile of stuff now?
Yeah, because I think one of the variables to it is that the reason that textile waste is always at the back of our heads is because we have to manage a bunch of food waste on a daily basis. These are perishables. These go rotten faster, and the consequences of them rotting away in your house is probably more dire to you than
Yeah.
the textile waste, right? So
Yeah,
I
it's a
think
real health
yeah.
risk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so like we already have to manage all kinds of waste, and so textile waste being the one that can be safely around the house for safely for a longer period of time tends to end up being at the back of our heads. So how often do you think it would be good to think about discarding the textile waste? What's the ideal frequency?
It really depends on how often you have textile waste in your home and how fast your pile grows. So if you've got, a big pile of sheets that you need to do something with, then that's the time to do it. It depends on, how quickly you amass things. But, a lot of people in January do a house clean reset. So it might just be a day every year that you think about textile waste and what you're going to do with it. So repair, donate, swap. So creating those kind of categories so you can easily manage it.
Yeah. And how do you think practicing that, think before you buy and pondering a bit more about the responsible ways to discard, how do you think practicing these would impact someone's perception and life or the way they approach their household management?
I think it brings a sense of slowing down and mindfulness. So we're not always thinking, what do we need? And what are we bringing in that's new? It's about taking care of what we have and thinking more closely about what the objects and products in our home mean to us. So I think it actually would bring a lot of emotional well-being if we made time to think a little bit more about these things. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. That's some really good advice. I myself have been a hoarder before, a little bit, where I, just had to have every single one of a kind, pretty designed product in my house, and recently realized that you know there's appreciating a well-designed product, and then there's owning it, which like I don't have to own it, I can just appreciate from afar, which still drives me to a bit of annoyance, but it has done wonders for my well-being. So I will say that that's some great advice right there. And thank you for sharing your expertise with us. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Now let's move on to our open mic segment, and you'll get the opportunity here to talk about anything that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be related to the topic. So the floor is entirely yours. Take it away, Emma.
This is such a good question. I think maybe it's slightly related. I think I'm really passionate about making sure that there's creativity and playfulness in everything that we do. I think that some of the challenges around like household waste, it's boring and we don't want to spend time with it. But how do we make it fun? How do we like make it a game? How do we engage with the members of our household? So creative play is always something that I try and practice just to trick my brain into doing boring things. So I'm really passionate about that. Just, bringing creativity into the everyday.
Yeah, I love that so much. And that actually reminds me a lot of how I like to do clothing swaps. So sometimes if I want to hang out with one of my friends, I ask them, do you want to have a look at my wardrobe? I actually have a lot that I want to get rid of. And then we can do a little like try on session where they try on some of my clothes. I say like, oh, this looks great on you. And then they bring home, and then we get coffee at the same time. And it's just a lot of fun. So what are some of the ways that you bring fun into this process?
That's a great question. I mean, I think my kids who are little, they always bring creativity into everything, and sometimes it feels messy, but it's really fun and silly. And sometimes I have to tell my adult brain just to relax and go with it. So, so learning from my kids is one thing. I recently downloaded a cleaning app. So it kind of makes cleaning fun and making sure that you keep on top of your household chores, which I probably won't stick to at all, but it was fun to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
will
reality.
Yeah, I will say that I'm constantly downloading different apps to try and help with my productivity, and it is fun for a while, and then I stop and completely forget about it. But yeah, like, fun for a while is better than none at all. So
That's right. Our
yeah.
brains like new stuff. So a new way of doing something can really revolutionize it for a period of time. But of course, that new thing gets old.
Yeah. Yeah, novelty just is our kryptonite. We just get so drawn and attracted to novelty. Anyway, thank you for sharing that with us. That was a great use of the open mic. If our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
So people can find me at my website, which is my name. I'm sure it'll be written up for the listeners. I'm on Instagram and I have an email address. So I'd love to hear from people with any questions or comments about household textile waste.
Wonderful. We'll link those in the show notes. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope that you've had as much fun as I have had learning about maintaining your household textiles and managing the waste that comes with that. We'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks, Marie.
You've been listening to On the House, produced by the Household Management Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes like this from across 10 life management perspectives can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smart devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at hm.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Gabriella Yastra. Thanks for tuning in.